turn it over to staff first. So Philip.
All right. Thank you, commissioners, and I hope everybody in attendance today had a good Thanksgiving holiday with friends and family.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm also today thankful that Jack Westerman is here at the dais with me to help answer questions that may come up, since he's been the assessor for how many years now? 31 years.
So 1931 he started?
Yeah.
That's what it probably is.
So really value his deep knowledge and expertise in this area. So the purpose of today's here, I'm going to take probably 20 minutes to half an hour to run through this. I'll go fairly quickly. Tell me to slow down if anybody needs me to. In the packets of handouts you have are copies of all these slides. So today want to take public testimony and deliberate on setting levy rates for collection in 2010 for those, I'm sorry? Levy amounts, excuse me, for the county road levy, the general fund levy, and the conservation futures tax levy. And to do that, it sets a number of, it requires a number of actions. One is looking at a resolution to take bank capacity in the road fund. We have 3 resolutions setting the limit factor and declaring substantial need in the general fund, road fund, and conservation futures. We have 3 resolutions to set levy increases again in the general fund, road fund, and in conservation futures. We also have a resolution before you to divert road fund dollars to the general fund to cover traffic law enforcement costs. There is also a resolution authorizing a 1-year shift, levy shift of $216,000 from the road fund to the general fund in 2010. And then finally, to tie it up all with a bow, is if you, depending on what actions, after you've heard public testimony, you take on the 9 resolutions there, excuse me, would be then to pass a motion summarizing the net effect of those things in a letter to the assessor, and there is a state statute requirement that be done no later than November 30th. So let's take a look at the road levy and why are we proposing to change the road levy. Earlier this year, the county adopted a 6-year transportation improvement program for 2010 through 2015. And what that found is that of roughly a $23 million 6-year transportation improvement program, that 10.7 million is we do not have secured funding at this point for. We need to find funding for. It also included this graph, excuse me, which shows here's the cash reserve for the road fund, and here is the green line represents the ending fund balance of the road fund. And as you can see, in 2007, there was a substantial surplus above our minimum reserve goal of 25%. We've been drawing that down modestly up through this year. And then as you look forward, 2010, all the way up to 2015, by 2015, even with just funding the fully funded projects, we're looking at drawing down our fund reserves below anticipated revenues and our cash reserve goal of 25%. And so basically what that's saying is we need more money in the road fund in order to do even the projects that we've say that we've got funding for, and that still leaves a question mark about the $10 million of projects. So state law, RCW 8455.005 and several others dictate that property taxes shall not exceed the previous year's plus a limit factor of up to 1%, or what's called the implicit price deflator, the United States IPD, whichever is less, unless the Board of Commissioners finds that a substantial need exists. As the state measures it, they look at the third quarter U.S. IPD, which was minus for 2009 compared to 2008, was minus 0.725. So basically, if you were to simply apply the IPD, we'd be collecting less next year than we did this year. But since we have a 6-year TIP that shows a $10.7 million in unfunded projects, and that the road fund will have a shortfall by 2015, even with a very modest transportation improvement program in place, a substantial need does exist in the road fund for using the 1% limit factor as provided by RCW. Now, moving on to bank capacity. Since 1999, at various years, the commissioners have not always assessed the full amount of property tax allowed, and that's saved roughly $6 million in the past 11 years, covering all 3 funds: general fund, road fund, and conservation futures. And under state law, you retain the ability to return to that legally entitled rate in future years. The money that you didn't collect in past years is still a savings to the taxpayer, but you can go back up to the legal limit in future years if you so desire. And you may recall that last year, faced with the most significant recession since the Great Depression, and to blunt how deeply we were needing to cut county services to the public, that you voted to take bank capacity in the general fund last year for collection this year, and that was roughly $473,000. County Ordinance number 18-122004 establishes criteria for considering using bank capacity. And you may vote to declare an emergency, a financial emergency, by adopting a resolution at a public meeting, such as this one, stating the specific nature of an emergency and the basis for determining the amount of bank capacity to be used.
And maybe it's important to, early on in this, to recognize that this isn't just coming out of the blue from you recommending these things, but this has been a process of collaboration that you've really helped with, and with all the other elected officials and all the department heads. And these recommendations are coming forward as kind of a budget package. And this is part of it to all of us this year, and looking at all the different options.
Right.
So.
Yeah, the reality is, and I'll be covering this in a little bit, but the reality is even with the revenues that are being proposed to you today, the county is looking at reductions in force and in reductions in service levels to the public. And so what these are doing is
reducing that.
Reducing how deeply